When I went and tallied up all the money that I've given to Apple over the years between every generation of iPhone, iPads, MacBooks, iMacs for me, iMacs for the staff, computers that I've bought for friends and family, and the computers and phones that I've helped the audience buy, the number was kind of a gut punch, and it came in over $100,000. That is an insane amount of money for anything, let alone to give to one company. So we talk a lot about Apple on the channel. They're an interesting company that's doing a lot of interesting things, but I don't always agree with everything that they're doing, and I tend to be pretty vocal when I tend to disagree. I'm not sure what camp you're in, but one thing you can't deny about Apple is that company knows how to sell things.
But we think we've got something that is. And we'd like to show it to you today for the first time. And we call it the iPad.
Apple's ability to sell tends to always go back to when these products were announced. These keynotes that they put on are unlike anything else in the tech industry. From the presentation to the simplistic style to live demonstrations, Apple has pioneered the single company keynote. So before Apple started doing this, you would see phones after phones after phones get announced at things like CES or Mobile World Congress. And now companies want the spotlight for themselves. They sort of follow that Apple model of one company, one keynote, one or multiple products announced inside of it. And there's still a lot of wonder that you see inside of these keynotes, and the hype is crazy.
I'd like to let Macintosh speak for itself.
Hello, I am Macintosh. It sure is great to get out of that bag.
If you look back at the sort of the heyday of Apple, the Steve Jobs keynotes, when sort of these new products were announced, you know, you've got sort of big lines that stick out and big actions. The MacBook Air being pulled out of a manila envelope, the iPod, 1,000 songs in your pocket. These are memorable events in the tech space, and memorable events that really changed technology and sort of pushed other companies to sort of reevaluate what they were doing. I mean, I would imagine you could write a psychology thesis on Apple's keynotes and the brainwashing, you could say, that Apple goes through with these. You know, as you see a presenter work through an iPhone, the mind tends to go to, well, that could be my phone. You know, that could be me doing that. And you can interpret this as sort of rabid fanboyism, but if you look at it objectively from a psychological standpoint, what they're doing does make sense if their end goal is to get people to buy their products. I mean, so Apple's sort of single company event sort of changed keynotes. How about this? You never would have had a Samsung Unpacked if you didn't have Apple keynotes. With Apple being Apple, I think sometimes they get caught up in their own hype. And it is kind of funny to watch when that backfires. Recently, when they announced a $1,000 stand, they very easily could have spun that differently and not announce a stand for $1,000, but say, hey, we have a monitor, and if you would like a stand, we have the option to add one on and been done with it. But they thought people were gonna be super excited that the stand could be turned, the orientation could be changed, and it backfired. You could hear the audible groan. As much fun as I like to have watching Apple keynotes, it's also really funny to see them kind of brought back down to earth when these big faux pas happen. And inevitably, you know, they happen, you know, every couple years.
Because people don't just want to buy personal computers anymore, they want to know what they can do with them. And we're going to show people exactly that.
Apple's retail strategy now is so ingrained with the company, but if you look back when the Apple stores first opened, it seems stupid ridiculous. There's a video actually of Steve Jobs giving a tour of that very first Apple store at Tyson's Corner. You know, traditional electronics stores was like a Best Buy. You had racks and racks of stuff. Some were sort of behind gates. You couldn't always hold everything. The idea here was that you could experience the products. You could see them, you could hold them. People weren't going to be coming up trying to sort of ask you to buy stuff. There was no aggressive commission that sort of sales associates were going to be given. It was more experiential with the hope that either you buy something in store or you go home and buy it. Apple really didn't care. They just wanted you to see their products. And now that makes total sense. And a big special thank you to our Irvine Spectrum Apple Store for dealing with my mom, who's gone in like a lot of time with questions on her stuff. So shout out to you for troubleshooting that. So I didn't have to. It makes me seem like a bad son, but I appreciate it. And there are a lot of moms out there, grandparents and fathers and kids who've gone to the Apple Store to learn how to use their products. But also, at least it used to be, the Genius Bar, a physical Genius Bar where you could take your product, hand it to somebody, and they could fix it for you on the spot, or you could come back and pick it up with something that was really nice. You know, you wouldn't have the Samsung experience, the Google pop-ups. I don't think you'd even have these sort of standalone Amazon stores if it wasn't for what Apple did. And I think for consumers, again, it comes back to support. It changed what they expect a level of support for their products. Your Galaxy S10 breaks, chances are you don't want to send that back to Korea, to wherever that has to go to get fixed, wait for it, be without a phone, and then get the phone back. You want to walk into a location, hand them your phone, and leave with that problem fixed. And for the most part, that's where Apple's been really successful, and that changed the expectations of support for the consumer.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
Hold up, here I come.
Whoa, PC?
Yeah, it's all this trial software. They pack my hard drive full of it, all these programs that don't do very much unless you buy the whole thing.
So no matter how good a product is, I mean, today, if you can't market that product, chances are you're not going to be able to sell it that well. And Apple's marketing has been really good. I mean, those Mac versus PC commercials were amazing at the time. And they created a perception of what a Mac user was and what a PC user was. There's been some times I wish that Apple would come out swinging in marketing, or at very least block some of the punches that are thrown, their direction. Samsung's done an amazing job countering Apple's marketing. Companies have been sort of hitting Apple, and I would love to see Apple hit back, and perhaps they're taking the stand of like, we're better than that. But still, they could answer those complaints. And I would personally love to see an aggressive Apple ad campaign. They're kind of like Tesla in the way that their users have become marketers for the product. They become evangelists for the company. iPhone users tend to want other people to use the iPhone for better or worse. And you saw that with Tesla too. They don't run any marketing or advertising, yet their users are out there offering test drives and evangelizing for the company. And it's rare that you see people really give two craps about what phone somebody is using, but iPhone users tend to be a vocal and passionate bunch. As Apple tends to go, and I mentioned this throughout the video, it's a theme, other companies tend to go too. And that's not always great. There tends to be sort of replication of really kind of the crappy moves that Apple makes too. And some of those moves tend to almost feel punitive to the customer. So things like removal of the headphone jack, notches, AirPods, so the sort of the prevalence now of wireless headphones. You could see as Apple goes, the industry goes as well. And if you think about trends that have changed the space, there aren't that many that started with other companies. They tend to start with Apple and percolate out. Again, all of this kind of blowing hot air at Apple's direction could be interpreted as rabid fanboyism, but psychologically and from a business standpoint, it's really interesting to look at the success that Apple has had, especially success considering some of the products have not been the best in market and still are not the best in market, but people still go to buy them. So there's a lot to learn for other companies from what Apple's done successfully. I think Samsung is realizing that, and you're seeing it with the Samsung experiences. You're seeing it with Samsung Unpacked. These big events where they control the message is something that I think has been learned from Apple, but a lot of companies are taking it one step further, where Apple tends to generally ignore CES. You see companies that are sort of bringing their products to the masses, where you can experience and see them, hold them in your hands and get a sense of what these products can do. A lot of that came from Apple. And whether or not the Apple retail experience never happened, if we get there eventually, I can't answer. But anywhere you look in the electronics world, you'll see Apple's influence.